I'm Dr. Duke with The New American, very proud to be joined today by Bill Hahn, the Chief Strategy Officer for the John Birch Society. And Bill, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Well, this is a great time of year to look forward and look backward. The Romans had the Greek god Janus, right? One face always looking forward and one face looking back. And I'd like to do that with you. I'd like to get a look back, start with in this interview. Talk to you about where the John Birch Society went this year. What are the accomplishments, the action items, and the impact that we've had as an organization?
Most certainly, actually, and let me just focus on one area, because we have an agenda of 10 items, and we ask members to go ahead and crank through that as much as they can. But yet, we have a monthly bulletin that focuses on, or helps them to focus on certain agenda items. And it seems an ongoing agenda item for us over the last few years, actually even starting in about the mid-1980s or so, has been to protect the Constitution from a constitutional convention. All right, and I know your listeners are very familiar with that, but just to kind of help familiarize themselves a little bit, there's a movement in this country to call for a convention. And the inspiration is to get this convention so that they can propose amendments. But history shows us that that's not quite how it's going to work. It didn't work that way in 1787 when they were supposed to come together to basically, tweak the Articles of Confederation. And that wasn't quite the case. They actually rewrote the entire thing, including a new ratification method. And voila, we have a new Constitution. Now, we had some pretty brilliant minds back then of folks that did a great job as our founding fathers. But as the late U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia once said, we have a very poor century in order to write a Constitution, right? So the fact of the matter is that in 1787 that we had that convention actually run away. We don't want that anymore. And so our members for 2019, and actually I'll even go back to 2018 if I may. In 2018, we actually stopped every single one of the applications that were called in the states, and there were dozens of them. All right, and in 2019, we stopped every single one except for 3 states, and those actually snuck through. We had there are 2 major movers and shakers within the movement to call for a convention. One is the calling a convention for a balanced budget amendment, or BBA. The other is to call for a convention of the states, which is just to have a general convention to ask for or to, call for different amendments. And so the BBA folks have been around for a lot longer. And so they are up to, I think it's about 28 states at this point. Now, back in the 80s, they were up to 32, and the magic number is 34, and that's when Congress will actually have to call for a convention according to Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. So, fact of the matter is, the John Birch Society then swung into action in the 80s, much like what we're doing nowadays. Members really dug deep, went out there and talked to folks, talked to state legislators, and actually had a number of states actually rescind their call, and then blocked several others at that point.
Let me hop in here and ask a couple questions. There's a lot of information to dissect. Let me start with an obvious question, because not everyone's going to be as in the weeds about this.
Sure.
When we say constitutional convention, obviously the goal is to amend or change certain aspects of the founding documents, right? To get the requisite number of states to participate in this, so that as Congress has a convention, and then we now have opened the Constitution to fixing or altering or destroying. And to a lot of conservatives I've met across the country, this seems like a good idea. You meet conservative groups, Tea Party groups, for instance, and the argument is always, if we can get a hold of that Constitution, we'll get rid of term limits and all the things that we conservatives want, we'll get in there. And you and I both know they're not paying attention to the bigger issue. And so explain why conservative audiences ought to be very leery of these kinds of attempts to amend the Constitution.
Most certainly, and the fact that Justice Scalia had mentioned that this is a poor century to write a Constitution, and he knew, as well as many others out there, that there are special interest groups out there, as well as those on the hard left, that would love to get their hooks into the Constitution. So we should not be naive in thinking that this is only going to be the folks that the conservatives send to a convention. And to me that's ludicrous. You will find the fact that the hard left. I mean, just take a look at the 2020 presidential election. I mean, how much further left can some of these Democratic presidential candidates get? I mean, they try to out-left each other at every one of these debates.
Imagine who California sends to this constitutional convention.
Exactly.
And the Balanced Budget Act is a big deal for conservatives. Man, if we can get back to founding principles and require that, good. Are you willing to get that at the expense of losing the Second Amendment? Are you willing to get that at the expense of cracking down on our free speech rights, Because you know that in these kinds of negotiations, no one's going to get everything they want.
Oh, exactly. And the interesting thing is, if we were to just obey the Constitution as written, there wouldn't be a need for a balanced budget amendment.
See, that's a critical point, right? We already have the laws, and they're already ignoring them in the Congress, in the Senate, in the executive branch, across the Supreme Court. No, we're not following procedure and policy.
There you go.
So how is opening up all you can really gain, because they can go ahead ignoring it for 20, 30 more years. All you can gain is losing, ultimately, it seems to me.
Right. And so why would they want to follow a new amendment? So let's just say that that everything went peaches and cream, where there's the convention never ran away. Okay, let's just say that okay, fine, everything's going to work perfectly, right? Well, you come out with this fantastic amendment, and what happens? It's just going to sit there and languish, and along with the rest of them, because they're not going to pay attention to it. They're not paying attention to it now. That's a great point.
And so let me ask you: you brought up another interesting point, that the states are moving very quickly to try to get this passed. Repeat for me and explain to our audience what has the John Birch Society done this year, 2019. And what is the success rate? And you mentioned 3 states where it snuck through. What are those 3 states?
Yes, actually, there's a number of states that actually have gone through with Convention of States and BBA. And the interesting thing is the COS and the BBA will actually submit applications in nearly every state, it seems like.
Over and over again.
Over and over. As a matter of fact, we have members that are state legislatures in a number of states, and they know that if it doesn't pass, that COS or BBA folks will be there again and again and again. And you probably see a number of our videos out there that show that some of the strategies and tactics that the other side has used. And some of it's not above board, to be honest with you. And so for 2019, JBS, again, we've stopped them all except for 3 states. And again, this was basically for the COS, Convention of States, folks. So.
What are the states where it snuck through?
Actually, I don't have that
off the top
of my head.
The key is vigilance, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And this is the problem, because you defeat it once, you defeat it twice, but they're going to keep doing it every year. And all they got to do is hit that magic number once, and they get what they want.
That's right.
So where are some of the danger states? I know Wisconsin, where we're housed right now, right now it's being discussed, and it's one of those states that has not yet done it. We got to put all the pressure on. Are there any other places in the country where you think we need to focus our efforts?
Most certainly, actually. If folks were to go to jbs.org and click on the Find the Action Project, Stop the ConCon, we have a map of there that shows all of the states of where the ConCon has either passed or that it hasn't passed, but it is a target. And there are quite a number of them out there. And this is in tune for just COS and BBA. So I implore folks to head to jbs.org and take a look at
this. This is a huge issue out there, Mr. and Mrs. America, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This document has got us through 250 years of all kinds of issues, and it is still the Bible of governance for liberty, it seems to me, right? It is the Bible of liberty-minded government. Don't let conservative people convince you that this is necessary. Let's demand that our politicians obey the Constitution, our justices enforce the Constitution, rather than rewriting it or opening it up to being rewritten by a rogue runaway convention. Bill, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you, Duke.